Commander Talia Vrex gripped the shattered console of the patrol vessel, her silver-blue skin glistening with sweat as consciousness slowly returned. The acrid smell of burning circuitry filled her lungs, and the distant crackling of flames told her all she needed to know. They had crashed. "Status report," she croaked, her voice barely audible even to her own sensitive ears. When no response came, Talia forced her eyes open fully, only to be greeted by the twisted wreckage of what had once been the bridge of the Stellar Alliance's most advanced patrol ship. The joint mission was supposed to be symbolic, a Krindari warrior and a human engineer working together to patrol the disputed Fraxian border. A gesture of goodwill between species that had once been bitter enemies. Now it seemed more like a cosmic joke. A sharp pain shot through her left leg as she attempted to move, drawing a hiss from between her clenched teeth. One glance confirmed the worst. Her leg was bent at an unnatural angle, with the gleaming white of bone protruding through her midnight blue uniform and piercing the skin. "Don't move," a quiet voice called from somewhere behind her. "The ship's structural integrity is compromised." Talia's four-fingered hand instinctively reached for her pulse weapon, only to find the holster empty. "Step where I can see you, human," she commanded, forcing authority into her voice despite the waves of pain washing over her. Elijah Donovan emerged from the shadows, his tall frame hunched to avoid the dangling wires and twisted metal overhead. Unlike her, he seemed largely unharmed, save for a gash across his forehead that leaked crimson blood into his eyebrow. "Commander Vrex," he said, approaching slowly with his hands visible, "we need to get out of here. The fuel cells are unstable." "Where are the others?" Talia demanded, already knowing the answer from the grim expression on the human's face. "We're it," Elijah replied. "The escape pods launched automatically when we breached the atmosphere, but our section malfunctioned. We hit hard." With practiced efficiency, he assessed the situation, gathering what supplies had survived the crash. "Your leg is badly broken. I need to stabilize it before we move." Talia's silver eyes narrowed. "Don't touch me," she snarled. "My people use regeneration pods, not primitive human medicine." Elijah paused, supply kit in hand. "With all due respect, Commander, there are no regeneration pods within 50 light years. This moon is uninhabited and off standard patrol routes." "Then I'll wait for rescue," she replied coldly. "The Krindari Defense Force will have detected our crash." "Maybe," Elijah conceded, "but that could take days, and your injury—" "Is my concern, not yours," Talia interrupted, struggling to maintain her composure as another wave of pain crashed through her. "Your assignment was to observe Krindari patrol protocols, engineer, not to play doctor." He nodded once, his expression unreadable. "As you wish." He returned to salvaging supplies, methodically sorting through the wreckage. Within an hour, Elijah had constructed a makeshift shelter just outside the crash site, using debris and emergency materials from the ship. All the while, Talia remained inside the wreckage, stubbornly ignoring the increasing throbbing in her leg as infection began to set in beneath the alien sky. Through the jagged opening that had once been the ship's viewport, Talia watched the human work, efficient and focused. The 3 moons of this desolate rock cast an eerie purple glow over the landscape, illuminating his movements as he prepared for their survival. Pride kept her silent, even as the first shivers of fever began to ripple through her body. A decorated Krindari warrior would never beg for help, especially not from a human.
The twin suns of the remote moon rose on Talia's second day of stubborn resistance. What had begun as a sharp, localized pain now radiated up her entire leg, waves of heat and agony pulsing in time with her rapid heartbeats. The bone that had pierced her blue-silver skin was now surrounded by an angry purple hue that seemed to spread with each passing hour. Elijah approached the wreckage cautiously, carrying a container of collected water. "Commander," he called from a respectful distance. You need hydration. Talia's silver eyes, now glazed with fever, regarded him with suspicion. Leave it, she ordered, her voice noticeably weaker than the previous day. He placed the container within her reach and retreated, pausing only to observe. The discoloration around your wound suggests septicemia is setting in. Krindari physiology might be different from human, but infection works similarly across most carbon-based life forms. Your concern is noted, engineer, she replied coldly, though her normally commanding tone was undermined by a slight tremor. As the day progressed, Elijah established a communication array from salvage parts, occasionally glancing toward the ship where Talia remained isolated. He had respected her wishes, maintaining distance while quietly monitoring her deteriorating condition. By nightfall, Talia's breathing had become labored, and shivers racked her body despite the humid atmosphere. Her military training had prepared her for pain, for torture even, but not for the slow, insidious progression of infection that now clouded her thoughts and weakened her resolve. Fever dreams are the worst, Elijah commented softly as he appeared at the entrance of the wreckage with a small fire burning in a makeshift brazier. The night gets cold here. Thought you might want some warmth. Talia wanted to snap at him, to order him away, but her teeth were chattering too violently to form the words. Her leg had swollen to nearly twice its normal size, the purplish infection creating veins of darkness that spread up toward her hip. Our ancestors, she finally managed, believed humans were barely more than clever animals. That you mimic true intelligence without understanding it. Elijah nodded, unperturbed. And what do you believe, Commander? She didn't answer, turning her face away as another wave of pain crashed through her. Pride was a poor companion against the relentless advance of infection. Through the long night, Talia drifted in and out of consciousness. Vivid hallucinations took her back to the war between their species, to the stories her grandfather had told of human treachery and barbarism. Yet each time she opened her eyes, she found only Elijah, quietly tending the fire, checking the communications array, and watching over her from a distance, respecting her boundaries even as her body betrayed her. By morning, the infection had spread further. Her leg, once a source of strength that had carried her through countless battles, now felt like it belonged to someone else, a throbbing, alien thing attached to her body. The pain had become her entire world, narrowing her focus until even breathing required conscious effort. Elijah approached again, this time with determination in his steps. Commander, he said firmly, you have approximately 12 hours before the infection reaches a critical point. After that, even the most advanced Krindari medical technology couldn't save the limb, possibly not even your life. Talia's eyes fluttered open, her vision swimming. For the first time, real fear cut through her pride. Not fear of death. Every Krindari warrior accepted that possibility, but fear of dying uselessly, meaninglessly, on an uninhabited moon because of her own stubborn prejudice. What? She whispered, her voice barely audible. What would you do? Clean the wound. Set the bone. Use antibiotics from the emergency kit. It won't be pleasant, Elijah answered honestly. But it might keep you alive until rescue arrives. Talia closed her eyes again, feeling the fever burning through her blood and the infection devouring her from within. Her ancestors would be ashamed. But they weren't here, dying on this desolate rock. Do it, she finally whispered, surrendering not to the human, but to necessity itself. This will hurt, Elijah warned as he carefully cut away the fabric surrounding Talia's wounded leg. His touch was surprisingly gentle for hands that were clearly accustomed to machinery rather than medicine. Pain is merely information, Talia responded through gritted teeth, reciting the mantra taught to Krindari warriors from childhood. But when Elijah began cleaning around the protruding bone, she couldn't suppress a cry that echoed through the wreckage. Sorry, he murmured, working methodically. Your physiology is similar to human in some ways, different in others. The database on the emergency kit has basic Krindari medical information, but it's limited. Talia studied him as he worked, noticing for the first time the concentration in his eyes, the careful precision of his movements. You've done this before, she observed, trying to focus on anything but the searing pain. Field engineer in the outer colonies, Elijah explained, preparing a solution from the medical kit. Medical training was mandatory. Doctors were scarce. When he placed his hands on either side of her leg to realign the bone, Talia instinctively grabbed his forearm. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them, acknowledgement of the trust she was placing in him, however reluctantly. On 3, he said softly. 1. He snapped the bone back into place without finishing the count. Talia's scream tore through the air, her fingers digging into his arm with enough force to leave bruises. For several moments, she couldn't speak, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but breathe through the blinding agony. The anticipation is often worse, Elijah explained, already moving to stabilize the leg with materials salvaged from the ship. It's an old medic's trick. As he worked to create a splint and clean the wound more thoroughly, Talia found herself studying his face, the concentration in his eyes, the gentle determination in his expression. Nothing like the barbaric humans her people's histories had described. "Why did you volunteer for this joint mission?" she asked suddenly, needing distraction from the pain. Elijah's hands remained steady as he applied antiseptic to the wound. "Same reason you did, I imagine. Curiosity. Duty. Maybe something to prove." "I was ordered to this assignment," Talia corrected him, wincing as he began wrapping her leg. "The Krindari High Command believed my disciplined approach would be suitable." A hint of a smile touched Elijah's lips. "By disciplined, they meant you wouldn't kill the human at the first opportunity." Despite herself, Talia felt the corner of her mouth twitch upward. "Something like that." As night fell again, the fever began to recede, the combination of antibiotics and proper wound care slowly taking effect. Elijah had moved her to the shelter he'd constructed, which offered better protection from the moon's dramatic temperature fluctuations. The communication array picked up a signal. He informed her as he checked her bandages. Alliance rescue should arrive within 3 days. Talia nodded, unexpectedly conflicted about this news. 3 more days trapped with the human, but now, the prospect didn't seem as intolerable as it once had. "Thank you," she said finally, the words feeling foreign on her tongue. "For your assistance." Elijah looked genuinely surprised, then pleased. "You're welcome, Commander." "Talia," she corrected quietly. "If you're going to save my life and see me at my weakest, you might as well use my name." "Elijah," he offered in return, his hand resting briefly on hers, a simple touch that somehow bridged the vast distance between their worlds. By the 3rd day, Talia could sit upright without assistance, though her splinted leg remained painfully immobile. The fever had broken, leaving her weak but clear-headed enough to observe her surroundings, and her reluctant companion, with new eyes. Elijah had transformed their crash site into a surprisingly functional camp. The communication array was now complemented by a solar collector fashioning from reflective debris, a filtered water system, and a more substantial shelter that protected them from the moon's unpredictable weather patterns. "You built all this while I was." She gestured vaguely at her leg. "Stubbornly refusing help and then deliriously fighting infection?" Elijah suggested with a raised eyebrow. "Yes." Talia found herself laughing, a short, surprised sound. "We Krindari aren't known for our sense of humor, but I believe that qualifies as a joke at my expense." "Just stating facts," he replied, though his eyes crinkled at the corners. He handed her a container of the nutrient paste he'd salvaged from the emergency rations. "Eat. Your body needs proteins to heal." As the day progressed into evening, they found themselves truly talking, not just exchanging necessary information. Elijah described his childhood in the human colonies of Proxima Centauri, where resource scarcity had taught efficiency and innovation. Talia spoke of her training in the elite Krindari forces, the discipline and dedication required to become a commander. "Our peoples aren't so different," Elijah observed as they watched the strange constellations of an unfamiliar sky. He sat close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body, a warmth she found herself inexplicably drawn to. "Perhaps not in essentials," Talia admitted. "Though your biological structure is remarkably inefficient." "Says the woman with bones that snap like kindling," he countered good-naturedly. Their laughter faded into comfortable silence. Talia became acutely aware of his proximity, of the strange flutter in her chest when his hand accidentally brushed against hers as he adjusted her position to check her bandages. "The wound is healing well," he noted, his touch lingering longer than strictly necessary. "Krindari recover quickly. A evolutionary advantage," she explained, her voice softer than intended. "When your homeworld has 3 times Earth's gravity and twice the radiation, rapid healing becomes essential." Elijah's fingers traced the edge of the bandage, sending an unexpected shiver through her that had nothing to do with her injury. "Remarkable," he murmured, his eyes meeting hers. The air between them seemed to charge with something Talia had never experienced before, a tension both pleasant and unsettling. In that moment, she was acutely conscious of him not as a human, not as an engineer, but simply as a man who had seen her at her most vulnerable and treated her with unfailing respect. When his hand moved to brush a strand of her silvery hair back from her face, she didn't pull away. His touch was questioning, giving her every opportunity to retreat behind the barriers of rank and species that had once seemed so important. Instead, Talia leaned forward, her silver eyes holding his human ones. "I was wrong about you," she whispered. "About humans." "Not entirely," Elijah replied, his voice equally soft. "We can be everything your people feared. But we can also be this." Their lips met hesitantly at first, then with growing certainty, an exploration of differences and unexpected similarities. His skin was warmer than hers, his heart beat faster, but the connection that flared between them transcended biology. When they finally pulled apart, Talia rested her forehead against his, her breathing unsteady. "This is not part of standard Stellar Alliance protocol," she murmured. Elijah's laugh was low and warm against her skin. "Definitely not in the manual." That night, they slept side by side, his arm protectively around her, her head resting on his chest where she could hear the unfamiliar but comforting rhythm of his single human heart. The rescue vessel appeared on the horizon at dawn, a sleek combination of Krindari and human technology that symbolized the uneasy alliance between their species. As it descended toward their position, Talia felt a strange reluctance replace her earlier eagerness for rescue. "They're early," Elijah observed, packing away the last of their makeshift camp. His voice held the same note of regret that Talia felt. "Efficient," she replied, testing her weight on her injured leg. It still couldn't bear her full weight, but the improvement was remarkable, due entirely to Elijah's care. When the rescue team disembarked, 2 Krindari officers and a human medic, their surprise at finding the survivors not just alive, but cooperating was poorly concealed. "Commander Vrex," the senior Krindari officer saluted. "We had calculated only a 17% probability of finding you alive after 4 days without proper medical facilities." "Your calculations failed to account for human ingenuity," Talia replied, noting the startled looks her comment provoked. "Engineer Donovan's skills proved invaluable." The human medic examined her leg with professional detachment. "Impressive field medicine," she commented to Elijah, "particularly given the xenophysiological challenges." "I had a cooperative patient," he responded with a smile that was meant only for Talia. Eventually, as they prepared for departure, the reality of their situation began to settle around them. Their time in isolation, the intimacy forged through survival and healing, was ending. Once they returned to their respective commands, the barriers of protocol, culture, and prejudice would reassert themselves. While the rescue team loaded equipment, Talia found a moment alone with Elijah, away from curious eyes. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. "When we return?" Elijah took her hand, his thumb tracing the slightly different configuration of her knuckles. "Now we face the real challenge. It's easy to connect when it's just 2 people struggling to survive. It's harder when the whole universe is watching and judging." "My superiors will question my judgment," Talia acknowledged. "Fraternization with a human will not be viewed favorably. Mine will probably give me a medal for advancing interspecies relations," Elijah replied with a wry smile. "Humans are inconsistent that way." Talia laughed softly, then grew serious. "I don't regret it," she said firmly. "Any of it, even the pride that nearly killed me. It led me here, to this understanding." "And what understanding is that, Commander?" Elijah asked, his voice gentle. "That connection transcends difference," she answered, drawing closer to him. "That sometimes, what we need most comes from the most unexpected sources." Their final kiss beneath the alien sky was both a culmination and a beginning, acknowledgement of all they had shared and all they might yet discover together. On the journey back to Stellar Alliance headquarters, seated side by side in the medical bay of the rescue vessel, Talia and Elijah began planning. Not just for official debriefs and medical follow-ups, but for something more challenging, a future that neither had imagined before their crash landing. The Joint Patrol Program could use dedicated officers, Elijah suggested. Officers with first-hand experience of cross-species cooperation. And its challenges, Talia added, thinking of her own prejudices, now so thoroughly dismantled. When they docked at headquarters, they emerged not as reluctant participants in a symbolic mission, but as living proof of its potential, a Krindari commander walking with the assistance of a human engineer. Their difference is obvious to all observers but no longer defining the space between them. As they parted ways for their separate debriefings, Talia gripped Elijah's hand one last time. Sometimes, she said quietly, pride must break before healing can begin. Elijah nodded, understanding all she left unspoken. And sometimes, he replied, pain leads to the most unexpected joy. Their paths forward would not be easy, but having survived a crash landing, a life-threatening injury, and the shattering of lifelong prejudices, they faced the future with something neither had possessed before, hope that transcended the boundaries of their different worlds.